What's good, guys? Welcome back to my channel. It's Driscoll here. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the push-up, one of the most common exercises within the gym, and in my opinion, one of the most shittily performed or misperformed exercises in the gym. I'm sure you've seen it before, a bunch of different forms of push-ups. Some of them look really good. Some of them just look like something you've never seen before. So yes, there is a correct form to the push-up. And I'm going to cover that through this checklist here. The main idea here is to keep you as safe as possible while performing it with the joints, muscles, everything like that, and to maximize your strength so you're pushing with the correct mechanics in order to engage the right musculature and build foundational strength. All right, so let's start with the hands here. I think it's very important to start with the hands because that's the initial setup. I always tell people you can't perform a movement properly unless you set up for that movement properly. So the hands are very important. I tend to see a very wide positioning with the hands for the most part of regular gym goers, and that is mainly because people are using the path of least resistance, right? So they're doing it where it's going to be easiest for them. The more you go out with your hands, the easier it's going to be to complete that push-up because you have less range of motion to get to. So I like to have the hands just at about shoulder width. I always tell people when coaching them, hey, put your hands directly below your shoulders, and that's where we're going to start, okay? And the reason being for that is we want to line everything up as properly as possible. Now, if you are a little bit of a bigger person, you have a little larger torso, by all means, we can separate the hands just a little bit wider, but too much where you're feeling a bunch of stress through the shoulder joint here isn't always good. All right, moving on. Number 2, shoulders and elbows. And I have these together because I think once you fix one, the other tends to follow suit in the correct position. So the main thing that we need to think about with the shoulders is just taking them out of that elevation. A lot of times when people struggle to press, whether they're not strong enough in the position or the progression is too hard, we tend to elevate the shoulders to finish the press with the shoulder muscles, not engaging the chest. So what I want you to think about is pulling those shoulders down. We have to think they have to be away from the ears as we execute a push-up or any type of pressing we do. Second, with the elbows, I want you to think I need to see the pits of your elbows. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your hands down on the floor, put your fingers straight forward, right? And then without rotating your hands out, you're simply going to rotate the pits of your elbows forward. And so this is going to do two things. This is going to put the shoulder into some good tension and torque to keep it safe throughout the movement. And it's also going to keep those elbows in good alignment. So I personally like to have people inside of 45 degrees with their elbow as they press. Anything above it, I tend to see injuries or pain within the shoulder. All right, now let's talk about number 3, the scaps or the scapulae, or easy term, the shoulder blades. I know we already kind of talked about them with the shoulders and how they elevate and depress and how we want to keep them down. But within a push-up, we also need to think about how they move forward and backwards around the rib cage, what we would call that protraction and retraction. So very contrary to a normal bench press or a dumbbell press, where we would keep our shoulder blades back and packed so they're nice and stable, and we would press, with a push-up, we actually want them to protract all the way around. So we want those rib cage, the scaps, they actually come all the way up and around the rib cage. The reason being is we have a muscle called that serratus anterior. So that muscle actually attaches to the bottom of that shoulder blade there, and it wraps all the way around to keep the shoulder blade nice and firm. But it's a really good muscle for overall shoulder health, and we really want to work on that motion. So you may say, well, why are we doing that on a push-up as opposed to a bench press? Well, it's just because our back isn't laying on the bench anymore, right? We don't have to hold it nice and stable because we're not holding weight out in front of us. Now, we can actually push up all the way around because it's our body weight that we're doing it, and we don't have to support it with a bench. So the scaps, as we descend, I want you to think about you're pulling them back and we're retracting and keeping them down. Then as we push back up, we're pushing all the way up and around, and we're finishing almost with what you would feel a rounded back. So I always tell people, hey, get your chest as far away from the ground as possible when you push back up. And I really want you to feel that engagement of that serratus anterior. Number 4, the head and the neck. Head and the neck is probably one of the most common faults within a push-up, just because people have always been told that they have to look straight forward when they're pushing up. With anything, any type of lifting that we do, I am a big fan of keeping your neck and spine very neutral. So whether you're deadlifting or you're rowing or you're doing a pull-up or we're doing a push-up, I want the neck to be nice and neutral. So what I like to tell people is, hey, if I laid a 2x4 on the back of your head there, I want you to make your back of the head and the upper back in a nice straight line. So almost kind of making double chins here and doing your push-ups that way. All right, so number 5, the body and pelvis. Pelvis? I'm sure you've never thought about your pelvis within a push-up, but we're gonna talk about it here. So first, the body. Just like I talked about with the head and the neck, I want the body to be as neutral as possible. So I always tell people, hey, from your ear all the way down to your heel within a push-up, I want it to be as straight as possible. Now, the push-up is at the top position is what we would kind of call that tall plank or tall bridge. When we're in that position, the core is demanded, right, to hold our spine nice and neutral, right, to hold our body up against gravity. So what I want you to think about is keeping that belly button from sagging to the floor. Almost think about that rib cage being kind of pulled down over the hips, and now we can actually prevent ourselves from sagging down. The push-up is more than just a chest movement. It's kind of a full body tension. It's an anti-extensive movement. I don't want to get too much into that, but moral of the story is it demands more of the core and demands more of the body than just a chest press or tricep push. So what do we think about with the pelvis? Well, I want the pelvis to sit as neutral as possible. Okay, so what you're gonna see here within the video is I'm gonna tilt my pelvis down and forward, or what I would call sagging that belly button to the floor. Now I'm gonna come up and make it neutral, and I almost want you to think about taking your pelvis and almost tucking your tail under. That's what we call that posterior pelvic tilt. And so what we're doing there is we're kind of aligning that spine and engaging that core in the correct position so that we can minimize our energy leaks as we start to produce force within the push-up. Really, everything that we talk about here in terms of body alignment kind of all comes back to minimizing those energy leaks so that we can produce as much force as possible and that you can do as many push-ups in correct form as possible. All right, last but certainly not least, the tempo and the pause of the push-up. This one probably drives me the most insane when I walk into a gym and I see someone just pounding out reps and not caring about the tempo or the speed of which they're doing it. The big thing for me, and probably for a lot of you out there, is I want people to gain foundational strength in a safe manner. And I always tell my clients, if you can't perform a push-up with a solid 2-second negative and push-up still with good form, we need to regress that movement. Whether that's to an elevated hand surface or a band-assisted push-up, something has to be done because we're not completing it in good, safe form. Now, when it comes to tempo, you can change it up. You can go 3 seconds down, you can go 4 seconds down, you can go 5 seconds down. I've done them all, right? So find what works for you, but definitely have some type of control on that negative phase because we know that eccentric loading is going to significantly help muscle growth, muscle damage, and that foundational strength moving forward. The pause, I personally like to have a brief pause at the bottom of the movement. So as we get down, we have that nice neutral head, neutral body, and we pause there for a second because that's where we kind of have that maximum tension through the pecs and the triceps there. Okay. I also like to pause at the top to make sure that we finish the movement, right? The core is nice and tight, we're protracting all the way up, and we're holding that movement really, really tight. If we're not, yes, you're still completing push-ups, but are you really doing them to the best of the ability that they can be performed? I would say no. So some people are going to agree with me on this, some people are going to disagree, but in terms of keeping people safe, making sure that their joints are healthy, and building foundational strength within a workout, tempo and these pauses are vital for you guys. All right, guys, so that does it for my push-up checklist video. If you guys enjoyed this video or found any value whatsoever, go ahead and please hit that thumbs up button, and then don't forget to subscribe to my channel so that you guys can know when all of my new videos are coming out. In the meantime, guys, stay strong, have fun, eat some pizza, drink some beer. I'll see you next time. Deuces.